5th World Hang Gliding Championships in Kossen, Austria, where over 300 pilots from 40 countries gathered for the carnival atmosphere, the fun, the excitement, and the chance to compete for the highest accolade in a sport considered by many to be suitable only for the adventurous, the daredevil, or the completely mad. First developed as part of the research into the United States space program, hang gliding was swiftly adapted by the enthusiasts in the quest to conquer man's oldest and greatest ambition. Kossen itself is a picturesque town high in the Austrian Tyrol, not far from the famous skiing resorts of Kitzbühel and Sol. Its very relaxed surroundings proved to be a magnificent setting for the teams and supporters who took over the town for the 2 weeks of competition. And for many who'd come halfway around the world, it would also be a holiday of a lifetime. After a week of settling into the town's sleepy routine, all thoughts went to the competition days ahead. But how do you judge a hang gliding competition? We asked Derek Evans, manager of the British team.
Well, it's judged on speed, distance, or time in the air. In the old days, it was time in the air and the ability to land on a spot. Now it's the ability to travel 100 kilometres in the quickest time.
That sounds incredible, to actually travel those sort of distances.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've come a long way in 10 years. And with the machinery we've got now and the knowledge that these guys have built up, we're almost up with the sailplanes, apart from the speed element.
How dangerous a sport is it?
It's as dangerous as you want to make it. Technically, it's perfectly safe, just as driving your car is technically perfectly safe. Judgment of conditions, judgment of how you fly will determine how safe it is. But there'll be no accidents here to date, and I doubt if there'll be any more. I don't know if that record will change during the rest of the competition. I think it'll be 4 teams who will be fighting for the gold medals. Australia, the Americans, the Canadians, and us. And I rate our chances as very high.
And how do flying conditions compare with those back home?
Totally different. We fly on 600-foot hills at home. We've got 5,000-foot hills here, mountains, lee-side thermals. The heat of the sun is greater. There's more rock here. The thermals will be more turbulent, and they've got to be pretty brave guys who stick it out for 5 or 6 hours each day. It's a beautiful sport. That is one of the beauties of the sport. You can be above the snow line, above the tree line, above people, away from pollution. It's a marvellous feeling.
I'm not going up. I'm not going up.
Yeah.
See it? They all look like they've got...
Could be good.
Southwest a bit.
After checking the wind direction and cloud formation, they then start putting together their gliders. A job each pilot does quietly and efficiently, on his own, making all those fine adjustments on which his life depends.
Just ready off, straight off. Window opening at 11:15 until 2 o'clock. ZC, which is Hopconic Arthur's Gaff, followed by the small triangle KE, no control points, and Kossen goal. Have you all got the photograph of the board then? Board, glider number on the ground, glider number, I suggest, as you cross the valley here, in your first glide. Okay?
Yeah. Okay, we'll have a beat there.
Right, let's get back up to the top.
Once set the task, the pilots are given a period of time during which they must take off, usually 2 hours. They call this the window. As they're only allowed 1 attempt, it's the skill in judging when conditions are right that can make or break a champion. When they feel those conditions are right, every pilot can suddenly take off within minutes. Today, conditions are particularly blustery, making the task that much more difficult. John Pendry was first off. Quickly, other pilots followed, wanting to take advantage of the passing thermal and perhaps stay on his heels. Their judgment looked good. The thermal was there, and up they spiraled to start the day's flight. Some pilots, however, decided to wait a couple of minutes before they took off, hoping to gain from seeing how the others were coping. Perhaps even a better thermal might come along. This was the risk that they had to take. No matter what, there were plenty of supporters ready to offer advice where needed and keep track on their team's performance. The views from Zimmertal were quite staggering. Although the temperatures were in the 80s, snow was still lying on the north-facing slopes. Some pilots preferred to take off later than others, but less than half an hour after the first pilot had gone, the last of the field finally disappeared, off across the snow-capped mountains. For the supporters left behind, all you could do was watch, wait, and hope. This was also the time when you could take a break, as no pilot was likely to be down for a good while. Today's task was considered by most to be particularly difficult, and when the news came through that Steve Moyse had come down 3 miles short of the landing field, all eyes were searching the sky to see who would be first to return home. Making it back to the landing field means a 15-point bonus, and with the competition being so close, that could lift you 2 or 3 places in the championship. At last, someone had been spotted. A quick check of the pilot's wing number, it was 311, Britain's Michel Carnet. This was a tremendous result for him, lifting him 22 places in the points table from 29th to 7th. Second in, John Pendry, always a favourite with the crowd. This performance took him back to first place in the championship. Third to land, Canadian Randy Haney, a pilot who'd been surprising everybody over the last few days and was showing that he could well be in contention for the title as he lifted himself 10 places to third overall. Everyone wanted to go, for fear of missing out on the good thermals. As Larry Tudor takes off, the pressure shows, for he comes nearer than anyone else to having a mishap on takeoff, as he only just misses the trees on this risky 360-degree turn. What about John Pendry? How does he feel?
The tricky bit is getting up from here at the moment.
Now, some people are taking off this side of the hill, some people are taking off the other side of the hill. Why is that?
Well, the sun's beating down on that side of the hill and the thermals are coming up over there, but the wind is actually blowing this way, so it's coming up here. So you either take off into the wind and fly around into the thermals, or wait till the thermal wind blows up the other side and take off into that.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to take off here on this side. I think it might start working this side in a couple of minutes, in a few minutes. Hopefully, with a bit of luck, we'll be able to just get up here. That's what you don't want to do. They're dodgy.
Lovely. Keep going. Larry to the east.
I can see Larry's getting up there.
It's going up. 3 gliders now. Michel's behind me. Quite nicely. 4 gliders.
As the later pilots start taking off, the concern shows on their faces. Do they take off now with the main group, or hope that the wind might change? As they all head off east towards Vienna, the weather forecasters were proved correct. The rain came down over the mountains, killing the thermals and dampening any hopes of a new record being created. Haut Salve is a familiar sight to the visitors of the skiing slopes around Seoul, but in the summer, it's also a superb location for hang gliding. Although the sight of gliders gives the impression of calm and serenity, the atmosphere in the team camps has become increasingly tense. So much so that the Australians and British based themselves on opposite sides of the slope.
So I'd like Joe, will you be up there amongst them with your radio and tell us when the Aussies go and who's going?
It should be Bob and Michelle because they're the lower two.
No, I'm not going to follow anybody. I'm going to do my own thing. Bob who?
Bob Calvi and Michelle should be marking them to a certain extent.
No, I can't mark anybody. I can't follow anybody. It just happens with the weather.
If they go real early, first off, they can clean up the course.
Yeah, but they'll blow. You know your theory, Bob. If you're going to win, you've got to do something different.
Right, well,
we don't want them to do something different. In other words, we mark. In other words, we just marked the four of them and played one-on-one. They couldn't beat us, could they?
By now, the individual championship had become a two-horse race between defending champion Steve Moyse and Britain's John Pendry. With 26 points separating the two of them, the pressure was on Steve Moyse to take all the risks, while all John Pendry had to do was to keep an eye on Moyse and play safe. First off, the wind dummies, non-competition pilots who test the winds and thermals for the competing teams. Things looked good, so first to go was John Pendry, followed swiftly by Steve Moyse. Meanwhile, the rest of the field were also battling it out, as the lower placings were still wide open in both the team and individual divisions. And as once again bad weather was being forecast, many knew that this would be the last chance of effective competition.
Oh, buddy.
Right to the very end, support was always there, whatever the pilot's chances of success. Back at the Kossen landing field, the excitement was rising. The morning's weather forecast had proved correct. Everyone now realized that the first of the leading trio of pilots home could end up being the eventual winner. Anxious eyes were scanning the sky, looking to see who that would be. And there they were, still stuck closely together. Steve Moyse desperately trying to shake off the persistent challenge of John Pendry. With his girlfriend Hilary willing him on, he heads for the trees to try for more lift. But it was too late in the day. The thermals were dying out, the land was cooling down, and the duo had to finally make for the landing field. First down, John Pendry, with Steve Moyse hard on his heels. That meant that after all that battling, both had picked up exactly the same number of marks, therefore not changing the 13-point lead still held by the Briton. Looking good. The Americans, out of the individual gold, still had hopes for a team bronze. As for the Australians, if Steve Moyse was to retain his title, then rain was the last thing they wanted. British pilot Bob Calvert was first away. He was lying third overall and always preferred getting up in the air as soon as possible. John Pendry followed closely behind, knowing that there was very little chance of losing his lead as long as he took off before the storm broke. Takeoff was restricted to 2 pilots at a time, and as many Britons as possible tried to take off first, hoping therefore to delay the Australians and ruin their chances of finding the best lift. All, that is, except Captain Bob Bailey. He volunteered to stay back in order to wait for Steve Moyse to take off. Then, by shadowing him as closely as possible, it would be easier for the others to read the wind and thermals around the Australian's glider, so being able to determine whether or not he's able to make a serious challenge for the lead. Although everyone did take off, the storm started moving in from the mountains, which gave the pilots 2 choices. Either keep flying till the thermals run out, or fly into the clouds and above the storm. That would mean running the risk of being hit by lightning, something every hang glider dreads. Is winning any competition worth that sort of risk?
This is the World Championships, and when people went off, it didn't look anything like this. Everyone knew what the weather forecast was. You know, it's a very, very, very tough meet, and Steve Moyse and John Pendry are separated by only 15 points, so one of the 6 pilots up there could be Steve Moyse. I haven't seen John Pendry. If it is Steve Moyse who's up there, then this will be the flight that wins him the meet. You know, he'll fly anywhere to do that.
Will they fly above the storm?
Well, they've flown through it. They've just sort of hung in through it, and you saw that when the clouds disappeared, or went away further on down the valley there were 6 pilots left in the air. One of them is mine, Mark Bennett, who's an American. He's up there with a couple of Australians and 2 others, so I haven't been able to identify.
Well, Steve Moyse hadn't been able to stay up, and like most pilots, made for the safety of the landing field. In doing so, he'd forfeited his crown as the rain hung over Kossen for the next 2 days, bringing the championship to an early end and confirming the British team as the new world champions. Ironically, on the day of the prize giving, the weather resumed to the perfect hang gliding conditions which had prevailed throughout the competition. And so some of the pilots used the day to show off their skills or just make their final flights before returning home. In what had turned out to be the closest and probably the best World Championships ever, there had been surprises and disappointments. Canada had been the surprise team of the year, coming in 4th. The United States were disappointed with their 3rd position. Australia came in 2nd, while the British regained their team crown, which they lost 4 years ago. In the battle for the individual gold, it was a disaster for the Americans, with their highest-placed pilot, Mark Bennett, finishing 9th. The Canadians, however, were thrilled with their performance, not only because of reaching 4th in the team placings, but their top pilot, Randy Haney, surprised and thrilled everyone by ending 3rd and taking the bronze. In great sporting style, the Australians set aside their disappointment to applaud the 2nd place of Steve Morris. And the new world champion, the man who was always favourite, but still managed to capture the imagination of the crowd in his quiet, unassuming way, Britain's John Pendry.
Look at the camera. Someone take me a picture, please. One for wings.
Congratulations, John. How many years has it taken to reach this level of competition?
Well, I've been flying for 11 years now, so does it take me that long to get there?
And how's it feel?
Great. Brilliant. That's what I've been aiming at for all this time. I don't think it's really quite sunk in yet, but, you know, it's a brilliant feeling anyway.
It was a very narrow victory. Was it a tough competition?
Yeah, it was. Very tough. I mean, we were playing such a lot, and it ended up so close. It got, you know, very tense at the end, and there was, you know, so few points in it.
So what's your next ambition?
Win it again.